Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and today I wanted to share my favorite movies that I have seen in 2024. And this is going to include new to me movies that I have seen in 2024 that may not have necessarily come out last year. I remember in 2023 people got a little bit annoyed that I also included new to me movies that I saw that year, but I like to include both movies that came out in 2024 but also movies that I just saw for the first time that year, so that's going to be included in this video. So a lot of them are some older movies that I saw with my movie club, which I have a link down below that you can join. It's on my Discord. Anyone is free to join and it's a really great place to introduce yourself to some new movies that have become new favorite ones of mine. I feel like 2024 just wasn't my favorite year. So I only have 4 on this list that came out in 2024 and the rest are older titles because I feel like I was more impressed by the older films that I saw for the first time than the ones that I personally saw in theaters. I'm gonna go from like favorite to like ultimate favorite of 2024. So let's start with The Wild Robot. I was able to go to a screening of The Wild Robot with my best friend and it was such a wonderful event. It was full of kids and parents who were really excited to see The Wild Robot. And then it was just me and my friend who decided to go, and we love animated movies and we also love DreamWorks because we are really big fans of Puss in Boots, and we got to meet the author of The Wild Robot before we saw the film and we were telling him that we love Puss in Boots and it made us cry, and he was like, "Oh, The Wild Robot's definitely going to make you cry," and he was correct. This is a really sweet movie about a robot named Roz who lands on an island inhabited only by animals, and she comes across a gosling who imprints on her because goslings imprint on the first living thing that they see when they're born. And this robot now has to take care of this gosling, and they form a really beautiful relationship with one another, but also form a relationship with all the animals on this island, and they coexist with one another. And it's a beautiful juxtaposition between this advanced technology and this primal piece of land where only animals live and humans don't inhabit it. Overall, this movie is absolutely beautiful. It has this beautiful texture to it that makes it feel more rustic and earthy, and I loved Lupita Nyong'o as Roz, and this truly feels like a film for everyone of any age. I feel like if you are a parent watching it with a child, both of you will enjoy it in different ways. This has a lot of discussions about motherhood, and it's just a really beautiful movie from DreamWorks. I thought it was going to be a good movie, but I didn't expect to cry and fall in love with the soundtrack, the characters, the art style. Everything about it was absolutely beautiful. It's definitely one of my new favorite animated movies of all time. Cannot recommend it enough. The next movie that I have to talk about is Wicked. I initially was very hesitant to see Wicked. I'm a really big Wicked head. I initially saw Wicked I think when I was like 11, 12 or around that age, and I fell in love with it. I love the Broadway show. I think I've seen it about 6 times with my family. It's one of our favorite shows of all time, and when the movie came out, I feel like the marketing was just so overwhelming and so in your face and endless that it kind of killed my excitement for Wicked, and I was like, I don't think I want to see it. But then the movie came out and I started hearing all the songs and I started hearing Ariana and Cynthia singing together, and I was like, I feel like I have to see it in theaters. So on Thanksgiving, I took my parents to go see Wicked with me, and I left that movie theater bawling my eyes out. I was so in love with Wicked that the movie completely blew me away and exceeded my expectations. And if you're hesitant to watch Wicked because you are a true Broadway fan of the initial show, I highly recommend that you give it a shot because they are so faithful to the Broadway show. They're so faithful to the characters, and I truly think that Cynthia and Ariana were the perfect picks because they really honor their character. They honor the quirks and little callbacks to the show on Broadway that we all fell in love with, and it feels so faithful to the Broadway show, and it brings it to life in such a grand scale with these beautiful sets and these beautiful costumes. My complaint that every single person has is that I think the lighting is atrocious, and I don't necessarily enjoy the person who directed the film that I can't remember the name of. I don't necessarily enjoy his directing style because I feel like there were a lot of moments where we just see the back of the character's head. When Ariana is singing No One Mourns the Wicked, there are so many key moments where we should have had a close-up on her face to see her emotions, but instead we just see the back of her head as she's moving forward through the set, and I feel like that's such an amateur mistake to make. And that happened also in another instance where Cynthia is singing The Wizard and I, and we are stuck on the back of her head for at least 10 seconds, and I was like, are we going to cut? What are we doing here? There were so many amateur moments in terms of the filmmaking of this film and the cinematography that I just was not a fan of. The lighting was absolutely horrible. The coloring was not faithful to how vibrant Wicked is on Broadway. And those were moments that made me kind of pull back from giving this a full 5 stars, because the performances are great, the faithful adaptation is amazing, the songs are beautiful, but the lighting, the directing, the cinematography, and I also felt like the audio was a bit low when I was watching it in theaters. I felt like I wanted to ask, can you raise the volume? Because I feel like I can't hear the first 30 minutes of this entire film. I felt like it was so muffled and quiet. There were so many different things from a technical perspective that held me back from calling this like a perfect adaptation. It's mostly from the director's standpoint that I'm like, we could have done this so much better. And I think that Wicked is just a beautiful film, but again, like, I always have to bring out my small critiques because at the end of the day, I am a person who can notice those little details. And I always like to mention them because I don't like to just like grandly praise something, because I always can find something that can be improved upon. So let's move on to the next movie that came out in 2024 that I'm so glad I saw the day after Christmas, and it is Nosferatu. Robert Eggers is truly one of my new favorite directors of all time. He directed my favorite horror movie ever, which is The Lighthouse, and he also directed The Witch, and he is such a fantastic director. I feel like the director of Wicked should take notes from Robert Eggers. I feel like Robert Eggers really has a personal style that you can feel in every single film, and Nosferatu completely blew me away. From the moment I saw the trailer, I knew I was locked in. I knew it was going to become a favorite movie of mine. And Nosferatu, to me, is a perfect film. From the lighting to the cinematography to the costumes to the set design, everything about it screams gothic and feels so immersive and atmospheric and eerie. And what I love about Gothic Tales is that it's not a traditional horror movie. It allows moments to sit in silence. It allows moments to make you feel uneasy, and it makes you feel uneasy without having these jump scares and these traditional moments that you would see in horror movies. We don't even necessarily see Nosferatu that much, and I think your imagination coming up with what he looks like is so much scarier than just constantly showing him on screen. Bill Skarsgård is one of my favorite actors, so I was so excited that he played Nosferatu because he can really embody any role that he takes on, and his voice and his commitment to wearing these prosthetics and the costume that Nosferatu wears is absolutely stunning. And I also really enjoyed Lily Rose Depp. I feel like I really underestimated her power as an actress, but her role as Ellen in this film is absolutely magnetic. She is so talented with her body and her facial expressions and this gloomy attitude that she carries with her throughout the whole entire film. I think she's such a fantastic actress, and this role really lets her shine in terms of her showing off her range. And Ellen is such a fantastic character because she has so many layers to her. And I think the way that Nosferatu as a story plays out is so interesting because Gothic stories examine a woman's desire and a woman's darkness, and I think that Robert Eggers truly captured that in this film in the same way that he did with The Witch. The Witch was the perfect setup to Nosferatu and put it on a grander scale because in The Witch, Anya Taylor-Joy's character also has this deep desire for something more, and she's asked in the film, wouldn't thou like to live deliciously? And I feel like that's the same energy as Nosferatu. Overall, Nosferatu completely blew me away with everyone's performances, with the costumes, with the storyline, with the gothic elements. Robert Eggers really stays truthful to the time period that he sets his movies in. He's well researched, he's passionate about each story that he creates, and I love how he takes his time with his stories. He doesn't just give it all away in the first 30 minutes. He makes you yearn for it. He makes you yearn for the revelations. He makes you yearn for the climax of the story. Robert Eggers is truly a masterclass director. If he can make Nosferatu as his third film, I think that's really impressive because he's only going to get better and better throughout the years, and I'm so excited to see what other creepy stories he's going to bring to life. Truly amazing. I cannot recommend Nosferatu enough. It's definitely going to become a new favorite movie of mine. I cannot stop thinking about it. Now let's talk about my favorite movie of the year, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm not ashamed to say that a movie about old white men arguing with each other for 2 hours is my favorite movie. And it's Conclave. I've been talking about Conclave all over social media, on my Instagram, on my TikTok, on my threads for months. Conclave completely blew me away and was a movie that I just decided to see on a whim one day, and it became a new favorite movie of mine. I've already seen it twice in theaters, and it is so fantastic in a way that always makes me feel like I'm fighting for my life pitching this story to people, because how do I explain that a group of cardinals being sequestered in the Sistine Chapel voting for the next pope is one of the most interesting movies of 2024. How do I make that sound interesting? It is interesting. If you're a fan of the political intrigue of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, like if you loved those moments where the characters are just talking back and forth, sharing secrets, exposing one another, you will love Conclave, because that's essentially what it is for 2 hours. Conclave is such a fantastic film, both from a filmmaking standpoint. The cinematography is gorgeous, the coloring is gorgeous, the set design is absolutely stunning, but also Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and all these other ensemble cast members are so fantastic at bringing forth this tension and this intrigue where you initially sit down for this movie and you're like, okay, like how crazy can a movie about people voting for the Pope be? And then you leave the theater and you're like, that's one of the best movies I've seen, because it's like a political thriller. So there are different people who are trying to become pope, and it's a voting process. So majority wins, and I believe there's like 120 cardinals who get to vote on who the pope is. And there are 4 different characters who are running to become pope. And throughout this whole entire process, you see these 4 characters kind of come under fire for their secrets, their lies, their past, and every revelation is so juicy and delicious and so exciting that I cannot truly describe it until you see this movie. I brought my best friend to see this, and she was like, I don't know, like, am I really gonna care about Conclave? And I'm like, listen, I know it's a bunch of old white men fighting with each other, but these secrets and the lies and the revelations that happen are so amazing. And she left the movie and she was like, that was a fantastic film. And it's definitely my favorite movie of the year because I have not stopped talking about it. I have not stopped thinking about it since I initially saw it. And I think it's truly such a fantastic movie, concept, script, and book to movie adaptation. I have to read the book still, but I'm so excited to do so, to relive Conclave in my head while I'm reading the book. It's most definitely going to win a lot of awards in the Oscars because I think the Academy loves an old movie. In terms of the cast, like they love an old cast, and I think they would love Conclave. Now that we've gone through my favorite movies that have come out in 2024, let's get into the movies that I've seen in 2024 for the first time that have become new favorite movies of mine. So the first movie that I want to talk about is Anatomy of a Fall. Can you believe that 2024 has felt so long? That I first saw Anatomy of the Fall in January of 2024. That year felt like 500 years because what the fuck? Anatomy of a Fall is such a fantastic courtroom drama where we follow this woman who is accused of murdering her husband, and we follow the initial investigation and then the eventual trial. And the trial is so interesting because it's different from an American trial. It's a French trial. The way that this story unfolds is very similar to that of Conclave, where you're like, okay, how interesting can that be? But the revelations, the secrets, the lies that come forward are so interesting. It leaves you on the edge of your seat because you're wondering what's going to happen next. You're wondering if she's going to be found guilty or not guilty. And Anatomy of the Fall is such a wonderful use of dialogue in terms of characters just going back and forth and bouncing off of each other, and you have to really pay attention to see what's lying beneath the surface. You're kind of paying attention to people's facial expressions to see whether or not they're lying, and it's such a fantastic film. It really left me on the edge of my seat. It's something that I can rewatch over and over and over again, and it's a movie that I love showing to other people. It deserved every award it got at the Oscars. Such a fantastic film. Now let's talk about Society of the Snow. I have spoken about Society of the Snow so often on this channel because it's truly such a fantastic film. If you don't know what Society of the Snow is about, it is about a team of Uruguayan rugby players who are taking a trip across the Andes Mountains when the plane crashes and they land in the Andes Mountains and have to survive in the harshest conditions by themselves for 72 days, and this is based on a true story. I absolutely love Society of the Snow because I love a good survival story, and I think this is one of the greatest survival movies ever created. Each performance in this film is absolutely devastating, and I feel like they're so much more heightened because of the makeup that regresses over time, and you see them become more gaunt and more sunburned. And it's a very long movie as well, but I feel like that length of film is so necessary to tell this story because every single detail is very important. Highly recommend Society of the Snow. I think it's one of the best movies that Netflix has put out. Then I finally saw Pearl, which is the prequel to X by Ty West, and this follows Mia Goth, who plays Pearl, who is living on a farm with her mother and her father. Her mother's very overbearing, her father is sickly, and she wants a life that she truly deserves. She wants to be a movie star, and she dreams beyond the farm that she lives on, but she dreams in a very delusional state where she believes that she is the greatest actress of all time, and you can see the regression of her mind as the film continues. And I really love this movie because it kind of feels like a dark Wizard of Oz before Dorothy goes to Oz. I found it to be such an entertaining movie from start to finish. Mia Goth really embodied the role of Pearl, and I love Pearl. I think she's one of my favorite horror movie characters because I love how weird she is, I love how delusional she is, and I love the way that she just kind of lost her mind. It's my favorite installment in the Ty West trilogy that he created, and I just think that Pearl is that girl, you know? Like, I'm on her side. Even if she's doing everything wrong. I think she's a delight. The next 3 movies I saw with my movie club, the Cinebun Club, and we consistently see banger films, guys. Like, we are consistently seeing such amazing films. So the first movie that I have to mention is Brief Encounter. Brief Encounter follows a housewife who constantly uses the train when she's going shopping, and while she's at the train station, she comes across a man who is a doctor who is also always traveling, and they form this illicit affair with one another where they are constantly yearning and longing for one another, even though they know that this relationship is basically just doomed from the start. Brief Encounter, I always say, would have completely ruined me if I saw that during 1945. If I was a housewife who went to the cinema one day and I watched Brief Encounter, I would be unwell coming back home because the amount of yearning and the amount of passion in this film is palpable. This story is so devastating, and you know it's not going to end well, but you can't look away because you are so immersed in their story and their love. The performances were superb. The ending makes me nauseous because every time I think about it, I'm like, I cannot recommend that movie enough. It is so beautifully made. It is so beautifully told, and it is just devastating. and amazing and totally, totally, totally worth your time, especially if you want to get into old Hollywood movies and you don't really know where to start. I would highly recommend this one because from the moment it began all the way to the end, I was on the edge of my seat. I was truly just bracing for impact. Then my movie club and I saw Whisper of the Heart, which is a Studio Ghibli film, and I think it's my favorite Studio Ghibli film besides Kiki's Delivery Service, and I feel like they kind of hold hands with one another because Kiki's Delivery Service deals with what happens when you face burnout with your passion in life, and Whisper of the Heart explores what it's like to find your passion in life and not letting that go. And I love Whisper of the Heart because it deals with a writer, and I also love writing, and I think the way that the story unfolds is so cute because we have this childhood romance, but then we also have our main character learning from people who are older from her, who teach her more about life, and overall the landscape is stunning. Every Studio Ghibli film leaves me in awe of the art style and the way that they bring a story to life, and it feels so billowy and it feels so, I don't know, like effortless to fall in love with these stories. And I actually put one of my favorite quotes from Whisper of the Heart in my Letterboxd review. So the quote says, "You're wonderful. There's no need to rush. Please take your time to polish your talent." So Whisper of the Heart reminds you that there's no rush in life. If you have a talent and if you have a passion, you have so many years to hone in on it. You don't have to be good from the start. You just have to start. And that's what I love about Whisper of the Heart, because at the end of the day, it's a cute love story, but it reminds you that you have talent and everyone has a very different talent. And as long as you're working on it and as long as you are kind of feeding your soul with what you love, you don't have to be great from the start. You just have to start. Then my movie club saw another movie very similar to Brief Encounter, and it's called Summertime. So we follow Katharine Hepburn, who is in Venice, and she falls in love with a man who lives in Venice, and it's just their love affair during the summer. And it is also a deeply devastating movie where you know this is just a passing time for both of them. You know it's not going to end well, but you can't look away. Summertime is an absolutely gorgeous film because it takes place on Venice and it has these beautiful costumes from Katharine Hepburn, and I love her as an actress. She's so spunky, she's so fiery, and I just love all the characters that she embodies. She is on vacation and she's enjoying her life when she comes across this man, and she's like, why not? Why not? And I'm like, you know what, go girl. And she has this wonderful summer with this man, and I love Summertime. I love Katharine Hepburn. I definitely need to see more movies by her because I always love every character that she embodies. The last two movies that I have to recommend, I have also spoken about a ton on my channel, and the first one is Speak No Evil 2022 version. This is the original version following a Danish family who visits a Dutch family that they met on holiday. What was supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unraveling as the Danes try to stay polite in the face of unpleasantness. I love Speak No Evil because it takes a relatively normal situation and turns it on its head and ramps it up to 100. Because we follow this family who's invited to stay with another family at their home after they initially met on a vacation. They aren't necessarily close with one another, but the Danish family decides to take the chance and just say, why the hell not? Let's stay with this Dutch family at their house. It's a mini vacation for us anyway. And simply by saying yes to that, they fall into this world where this family is so rude and doesn't respect their wishes and doesn't respect them as people, and we see that increase to this level that is completely unrealistic but fits for this horror movie. And I always saw people on Letterboxd complaining that the Danish family is a little bit too passive, but I think it's very realistic because there are a lot of passive people in life. You can see that in the passive bystander effect where people will just watch someone getting attacked and they won't do anything. They'll just film them and walk away and not even think to help one another because they're passive. I think passivity is a very dangerous thing in society, and that is explored in this movie. It explores a family that is very passive, that lets the Dutch family kind of run over them, and it increases it to this exponential level that feels outlandish, but it could be possible, because if you don't stand up for yourself in these little situations, are you going to stand up for yourself when your life is in danger? Who knows? And I always tell people, don't look at the trailer, just go into the movie without knowing a lot about it, because you will get surprised by every twist and turn and constantly question, when would you stand up for yourself? Would you stand up for yourself in the beginning? Would you stand up for yourself in the end? Let's move on to the last movie that I have to recommend, which was a favorite first watch of 2024 for me, and it is The Vanishing. The Vanishing is a film following Rex and Saskia, who are on a road trip, and they stop at a rest stop, and Saskia gets out and she goes to the bathroom and she never returns. Years later, Rex is still on the search for Saskia when he starts to receive letters from the man who took Saskia. The Vanishing for me is a horror movie. Even though people say it's a psychological thriller, I think it's a horror movie because I always think about this when I'm on vacation. And this takes that entire concept of what would happen if your wife disappeared. Would you move on? Would you stop looking for her at a certain point? Or would you be like Rex and become obsessed with the case, and you become so obsessed that you have to find out what happened to her against all odds? For the beginning of the movie, you're watching and you're like, okay, when is she going to be taken? Because you know that's going to happen in the movie, but you just don't know when. And when it finally happens, you're like, okay, what happened to her? And in a way, you feel like Rex because you can't stop thinking about it and you become obsessed with it. And all these possibilities crop up in your mind and you keep watching the movie because you want to know what happens next. And so does Rex. The reward of knowledge comes at a price for Rex. And I think that The Vanishing is absolutely fantastic. It's so horrifying from the perspective of like a woman who's constantly cognizant of that situation happening. And I think it is so well done in terms of ramping up tension and kind of making you feel like the main character losing his mind. You truly are wondering, when is the ball going to drop? And then when it does, then you're left completely haunted by this entire movie. So those are my favorite movies of 2024. I saw some amazing movies that came out in 2024, but I feel like this was the year of backlist titles. And based on all of my favorite movies that I listed here, please recommend movies that I should add to my watch list based on the characters that I like, the storylines that I fall in love with, the genres that I love. Please recommend movies that you think that I would love down below. And I would love to know your top favorite movies of 2024. It doesn't have to be movies that came out that year. It could be new to you movies that you saw personally in 2024. Because I always find it limiting when people say, you can't put older movies in your favorite movies of 2024. These are movies that I saw in 2024. So these are my favorite movies of 2024. If you want to follow me on Letterboxd or Instagram, where I post a lot about the movies that I'm currently watching, all my links will be down below. And if you have not subscribed, be sure to do so you can see more movie content from me in the future. If you stayed this far in the video, leave a black heart emoji so we can see who stays for the longest. If you do, thank you so much, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!